Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident God of Thunder. In the Marvel Comics, Tyr is the oldest son of Odin, the general of Asgard's armies, and the Norse God of War. However, despite all this, he is one of the most neglected Thor characters in Marvel. He constantly switches from unimportant side character to full-on villain, with little explanation for the inconsistency or care given to his character. But perhaps nothing better exemplifies the neglect of Tyr more than the fact that the most important thing he ever did, sacrificing his hand to bind Fenris, never actually appears in the comics. The binding of Fenris occurred in the Norse Myths, and we are told that the event took place in the Marvel Universe, but never once has Marvel seen fit to show it. That is, until the release of the Sword of Surtur, a novel by CL Werner set in the Marvel Universe with Tyr as the main character. Now we'll finally see how this Norse myth took place in the Marvel Universe on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
The Sword of Surtur is a prose novel written by CL Werner as part of the Legends of Asgard series of novels. The novel focuses on Tyr, and Chapter 3 of the novel provides the first Marvel adaptation of the binding of Fenris. The original myth is found in the prose Edda. The god Loki has 3 children who are all fated to help bring about the destruction of the gods: Jormungandr, Hel, and Fenris Wolf. Jormungandr and Hel are cast away, but Fenris is raised in Asgard. Fenris begins to grow incredibly large, so the gods realize they have to bind him in order to prevent him from bringing about the prophecy. Fenris allows himself to be bound so that he can achieve fame by breaking out, and to the gods' dismay, he always easily breaks out of the gods' chains. The gods go to the dwarves, who forge Gleipnir, a weak-looking chain made of things that don't exist, such as the breath of fish and the roots of a mountain. Fenris is suspicious of this soft chain, so he will only allow himself to be bound if the gods agree to free him if he can't break out, and says that one of the gods must place their hand in his mouth as a sign of good faith. Tyr volunteers, and places his hand in its mouth. When Fenris realizes that he can't break out, and that the gods won't free him, he bites off Tyr's hand. Tyr would remain missing a hand, and Fenris would remain bound until Ragnarök, when he would at last break free and swallow Odin whole. This is by far the most famous story of Tyr in Norse mythology, but it's never really received much attention from Marvel. Tyr's first couple appearances actually feature him with both hands, and it wasn't until Thor number 275 when Tyr would get a one-handed redesign. Here, Tyr also mentions that he lost his hand to the Fenris Wolf, which confirms that the story did take place in some way, but we never actually see the event itself. In fact, the first time we even see Tyr and Fenris interact is when they team up to support Hela in 2018's Thor number 2. While the comics themselves have yet to show this story, this gave an opportunity for CL Werner's Sword of Surtur novel to finally tell the story as it occurred in the Marvel Universe. Chapter 3 of the novel begins with an assembly of gods having a meeting with Fenris. Every year, 24 gods meet with Fenris in Varanheim and attempt to bind him. Fenris originally lived in the city of Asgard, but was exiled to Varanheim after he attacked the goddess Idun. This is a reference to Fenris's first appearance in Journey into Mystery number 114, in which he attacked Idun but was driven off to Varanheim by Håkon the Hunter. Supposedly, this story later inspired the fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Additionally, Håkon the Hunter makes his third ever appearance in the Sword of Surtur as one of the gods assembled. Right away, Werner does an excellent job of getting the little details right to make this really feel like it's set in the Marvel Universe. The gods discuss the wolf that has gotten bigger and fiercer than ever before, now standing 100 feet tall at the shoulders. It wears the Asgardians' broken chains as a sign of how it readily defies the will of Odin. Riding his 8-legged steed Sleipnir, Odin talks with Fenris as the other gods look on. Odin is the only god that Fenris shows the smallest amount of respect to, and that respect wanes as its power grows. Even its own father Loki has no power over it anymore. Frigga laments that Fenris was not shown enough love, and believes that is why it turned out so wicked, which I think is good and consistent characterization for Frigga. She clearly sees Fenris' situation as similar to Loki's, and since Loki is Fenris' father, Fenris is technically her grandchild. However, Tyr disagrees with his mother. There are some creatures with darkness inside them that cannot be banished by kindness. The attack on Idun was when it showed its true nature, and when it began to test if the Asgardians could stop it. Loki defends himself from Frigga's pained insinuations, saying that he hoped to help Fenris become a weapon that could defend them all from the Jotnar. He taught the wolf how to fight, but not why it should fight. He tried to fix this by bringing Fenris to Asgard so that it could learn to love the Asgardians, but by then, it was too late. Tyr wonders if Loki's regret has more to do with the fact that he can't use the wolf in his schemes anymore, but he admits that there may be some truth in his brother's claims. Frigga holds the chain Gleipnir, which the dwarves have given them. They claim it was made from things like the roots of a mountain and the breath of a fish, but Tyr suspects they are just trying to keep their real methods secret. A nice little reference to the Norse myths, but done so in a way that modern audiences don't have trouble taking it seriously. I mean, a main ingredient is the beard of a woman, and it's supposed to hold a creature that can challenge the gods. Thor doubts if the dwarves are even trying now, since they offered up such a weak-looking chain, but Tyr denies it, saying that now the binding of Fenris is a matter of pride for them, and they will forever be shamed if they cannot succeed. Frigga still thinks it would be kinder to just leave Fenris in exile, but Tyr dismisses this. They cannot continue to subject the people of Varenheim to this wolf, and they cannot send him to another realm where he is free to do as he pleases. Tyr returns his gaze to the monster in the valley. No, it is here. The reckoning between us must happen. What Werner has done here is excellently put the gods in a corner, and makes the future sacrifice feel necessary. The gods are going over every possibility, and each alternative is found wanting. They can't just leave the wolf be until they find a better solution, as it's terrorizing Varenheim's people and slowly building up strength. They can't just exile Fenris, since it will just come back stronger. And the chain will work, because the dwarves have placed their pride on it. This is important, because if every other alternative is not thought of, then Tyr's sacrifice isn't brave and noble, but foolish and short-sighted. Grim Odin rides back and tosses his helmet in anger. The wolf will agree to be bound yet again, but it wants concessions this time. If it should break free, then it may roam a quarter of the Asgardian continent. It originally wanted half, but Odin managed to work the beast down to a quarter. It makes sport of Odin, forcing him to bargain for the lives of his people. Odin would prefer to bargain with Fenris, since if they fight it and lose, then it will have no reason to hold back in ravaging all of Asgard. There is another reason not to fight it: the prophecy. Most seers claim that Odin will die on the blade of Surtur, but a few claim that he will instead be devoured by Fenris. I really like this little aside about Surtur being Odin's most likely doom, because in Marvel, Odin has multiple deaths at the hands of Surtur, and none at the teeth of Fenris, so it's difficult to argue that Fenris is Odin's doom without at least acknowledging Surtur. Tyr thinks about how prophecy is difficult to gauge. It's possible that Odin could avoid the prophecy by killing Fenris before Ragnarok, but it's also possible that Odin will be killed by Fenris no matter when they fight. It was too risky to engage it in battle, so they had to take the wolf's deal. Fenris approaches and tells the Asgardians to bring their latest chain, so he can soon begin roaming his new lands. Baldur is chosen to bring Gleipnir forward, since all things swore never to harm him, including Fenris, so he can safely approach Loki's monstrous son. This is a reference to Journey into Mystery number 106 and Thor number 274, which are Marvel's adaptations of the myth when everything in existence swears never to harm Baldur. It's another clever reference, though admittedly Marvel comics have never really used this fact too much, since nearly everything doesn't seem to mind harming Baldur. Fenris is immediately suspicious and finds that it smells of magic. Tyr is given hope when he sees that the brazenly confident wolf is now anxious. Tyr mocks Fenris for being afraid to carry on the game, but Odin glares at Tyr, recognizing the peril they are in. Fenris declares that there is trickery here and says he will only be bound if Odin promises to release him if he can't break free. Odin agrees, but Fenris wants insurance. He demands that one of the gods place their hand in his mouth until he is freed, but says this god cannot be Baldur, since he has sworn not to harm him. Tyr considers this proposal. The lands of Asgard would be safe, but whoever answers the challenge will certainly lose a hand. The Asgardians have strong healing, but the arcane laws of sacrifice are stronger. Odin could not regain his eye after he sacrificed it for knowledge, and whoever sacrificed their hand would never get it back. I really like this little comment about sacrifice because it helps explain why this decision is so important and why Odin can resurrect the dead but can't heal his own eye. Now it was Fenris who mocked the fearful gods, as even bold Thor did not volunteer. Then a horrible thought came to Tyr as Odin stirred in his saddle. If no one else spoke up, then Odin would take the beast challenge. Tyr calls out, "I accept your challenge!" What I really like about what Werner does here is he not only makes Tyr's decision feel necessary, but also makes it feel like a decision that only Tyr could make. One of Tyr's few consistent traits in the comics is his role as a strategist and general. Here, Tyr analyzes every possibility and determines the necessary choice. He considers what would happen to Asgard if Fenris was left alone. He weighs the pros and cons of battling the wolf. He even considers the many-sided nature of prophecy and determines that Odin should avoid fighting Fenris at all costs. Again, Werner makes the binding of Fenris feel like it's the only possibility, but he also has Tyr be the only one who really realizes that. Frigga sees her grandchild as a creature needing kindness, but Tyr recognizes that Fenris is too twisted. Thor doubts that Gleipnir will be strong enough, but Tyr is certain that it will hold. Baldur is forbidden from participating, and Odin is the Lord of Asgard, and also may be at risk due to the prophecy. And Tyr wants to protect his father, as well as Asgard. Immediately after Tyr calls out, Loki quickly grabs him and hides him in the crowd before Fenris can see him. Loki tells Tyr to move his shield to his right hand and shift his sword belt around, or else his loss will be much worse. Tyr complies and then rises to meet the wolf. The gods are relieved. Frigga's expression is anguished, and Odin is riddled with regret. As he walks to meet Fenris, Tyr wonders how much of this the Allfather was able to predict. A touch of fear is now in Fenris's eyes. He hadn't expected the Asgardians to accept his challenge, and his pride now prevents him from backing down. This is a great payoff for the arrogant wolf that's been built up throughout. Fenris is portrayed as this prideful creature that is so drunk with its own power that it feels it can do nearly anything. It only shows some respect to Odin, but it also makes demands and bargains with the Allfather. It feels it's nearly at the point where it can take on all the gods at once and revels in its own strength. But now the wolf's pride has put it in a corner. He knows that the Asgardians don't plan on freeing him since they hesitated to offer their hands, and he knows that the chain is dangerous, but his pride won't allow him to forfeit. Fenris shrinks down and tells Tyr to present his hand. Tyr does so, but Fenris glares at him and demands that he offer his sword hand instead. Tyr had instinctively put forward his right hand, forgetting Loki's instructions had made Fenris think he was left-handed. This is probably my favorite moment of the whole chapter, as it tells us a lot about the characters and is another clever adaptation to the comics. It shows how clever and cruel Fenris can be. It also shows why the Asgardians keep Loki around. I don't know what Loki has gotten up to at this point in the timeline, but he does eventually try to conquer Asgard a couple of times. Loki really shows his worth here by anticipating his son's nature and cleverly helping reduce Tyr's loss. It also tells us a bit about Tyr's nobility, since he wasn't trying to shortchange Fenris, but instinctively offered up his sword hand. Finally, it's a great adaptation from myth to Marvel. The original myth specifically states that Tyr gave up his right hand to Fenris, but Tyr has always been portrayed missing his left hand in the comics. Werner takes a minor change and turns it into what is, in my opinion, the best moment of this story. Tyr puts his left hand in the wolf's maw, and Fenris allows Baldur to bind him. Fenris begins to pull on the chain as it attempts to snap Gleipnir, but the chain holds. As he continues to violently shake, Fenris silently pleads with Tyr to call out to the gods. Tyr is relieved to see that they have finally bound the great wolf. Asgard was safe. Odin was safe. His father was safe. But when he looks to the other gods, he does not see relief, but horror. Tyr now realizes the gravity of the situation. The wolf could not bite Tyr's hand off just yet, as it was the only thing it had left to bargain with. And it only took one god, his brothers, his father, his mother. Any one of them could break at any moment as they watched Tyr being violently thrashed from left to right. Any one of them could break and free the wolf. The wolf gives Tyr another pleading look. "No," Tyr tells the great wolf. "You're caught, and you'll stay caught." Tyr smiles and raises his right hand. "By the way, this is the one I swing a sword with." Fenris is enraged at being tricked and now mocked. His fangs shear through Tyr's hand. This is a great final moment for Tyr that demonstrates his qualities as a general and his nobility. Tyr quickly realizes that Fenris still has Tyr's hand to bargain with, and that any Asgardian could easily break and rush to his aid. If Fenris is freed after being tricked, the wolf will be worse than ever. Tyr recognizes this and makes a choice that cements this sacrifice as being his own heroic act. Plus, it uses the best part of the story, which is the hand switch. Baldur goes to his brother and takes Tyr away as the wolf continues to thrash. Frigga wraps her cape around her son's bleeding hand. Odin gives Tyr 2 potions to dull the pain and stop the bleeding. Seeing the guilt in his father's eye, Tyr realizes that his father had indeed foreseen all this. "It was my choice," Tyr reassures his father. And the gratitude on Odin's face does more to relieve Tyr than the potions. Fenris changes both size and shape, but Gleipnir matches these changes. Fenris angrily calls them all oath breakers, but Odin corrects him, saying that they have not broken their oaths. Odin swore to free him, but he never said when, and he is lucky that Odin doesn't kill him for what he did to Odin's son. And when Fenris is finally free, "I," Odin says, "will be waiting for you, and on that day you will not find me in a merciful mood." While Tyr would later disagree with his father that Fenris was not deceived, I think the story presented truly makes this act feel heroic and brave. Nearly every character in Thor's supporting cast is acquainted with the idea of heroic sacrifice, but again, Werner makes this heroic sacrifice feel like one that only Tyr could make. Tyr's ability to accurately assess the situation and his willingness to use any means to avoid defeat allow him to bind the wolf. These are traits that Tyr possesses in the comics that aren't found as often in Thor or Baldur. Tyr's abilities as a general were why he was the right person for the sacrifice, but his heroism and loyalty are what give him the courage to make the sacrifice. Tyr's love for his father and his home drive the war god to give up his hand. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, maybe leave a like. It's a painless way of giving up a hand, just like Tyr did. Or a comment, tell me what you thought of the story. Would you like me to cover more of the Legends of Asgard novels? Even more of this novel. This is only chapter 3 of many. Okay, with that being said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You behold in breathless wonder